number of years ago, I started working with the famous British newspaper company, The Guardian. In fact, it must have been around 2003 or so. And until then, I had always assumed that newspapers were these very large sizes, simply because it was cheaper to print on large sheets of paper. But then I learned that I was wrong. In fact, it was slightly more expensive to print on large sheets of paper rather than small ones. So I asked them, why don't you make them smaller? That's more practical, if you reading it on a windy day outside or in a train or so. And then they said, no. All quality newspapers are broadsheet. They always have been that way, and customers wouldn't want it any other way. And, well, I didn't quite believe them, but I also didn't know how to refute their argument. So it continued as is. But then, shortly after that, in 2004, the newspaper The Independent, as the first newspaper in the world, reduced the size of its newspaper quite dramatically to about half the size, and saw a surge in its circulation. Then the Times followed, and it reduced the size of its paper and saw a surge in its circulation, and various other newspaper companies started to do the same thing, by the way, including The Guardian, and all saw a surge in circulation. Apparently customers did want it. They did want a smaller newspaper. So the newspaper companies had been wrong in their assumption. So then I thought, let me try and find out where that practice came from, because nobody could tell me. And after some background research, I found out that it started at a very precise moment in time, namely in the year 1712 in London. The then English government decided to start taxing newspapers based on the number of pages that they printed. After which the newspaper company said, oh, let's make them very large and print as few of them as possible. Now, that tax law was abolished in the year 1855. But newspaper companies ever since then just continued printing their newspaper on large sheets of paper. Now, that is what I call a management myth, an inefficient, outdated industry habit which nevertheless continues to persist. I then started doing some research on these type of things, and now I'm absolutely convinced that any industry has some of these management habits. Things that everybody does and has always been doing this way, and we just continue doing like that is. But in fact they're wrong. And in fact, industry progress is hampered by such management myths. And individual firms, if they're able to figure out such a management myth and change it, may get a substantive competitive advantage out of it.